The government is not going to be there to bail you out when your pantry is empty because you failed to prepare. Hello YouTubers, Alaska Prepper here. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to take a good look at this. Here it says, is the U.S. facing a mega drought? And I want to show you that it's not just the U.S. I would say probably about half of the countries in the world are currently facing severe drought problems. And this is really going to affect not only the water that we have that we need in order to live, but also the food production throughout the world. Now, with less food production, ladies and gentlemen, means what? Means less for everyone. With the population in the world rising, and with less food and less water being available, what does that equal? That equals into a humanitarian crisis like we've never seen before. And it's something that seems like we are entering into. Every moving thing lifted the dust into the air. A walking man lifted a thin layer as high as his waist, and a wagon lifted the dust as high as the fence tops, and an automobile boiled a cloud behind it. And then it says, so opens the grapes of wrath, the 1939 novel written by John Steinbeck that in part deals with the effect of the Dust Bowl on the American economy. In 2021, U.S. farmers are staring down drought conditions which could profoundly affect their operations for the remainder of the year and perhaps for years to come. And that's the key phrase there, perhaps for years to come. The water situation in the western half of the United States is concerning, to say the least. The U.S. Bureau of Reclamation released 24-month projections the week of April 11th, finding the Colorado River will be drier than in typical years, reported CBS. Now take a look at this world map, ladies and gentlemen. This is showing countries that will more than likely have severe water shortage crises by the year 2040. Some people may say by the year 2040, that's 19 years away. 19 years is nothing, ladies and gentlemen. And the thing is that most of these countries, including our own here in the United States, are already having droughts. Just like we're having in the United States, in the west part of the United States, we're having droughts. And what's being talked about in the west part of the United States is that it's a drought that is of epic proportions, mimicking droughts that go back all the way 400 years. Not only to the Dust Bowl in the 1930s, but 400 years back. And let's take a look at what some of these countries are. What is the current situation in India? For the 2 consecutive years, the entire country is experiencing weak monsoons, and hence a quarter of India's population is affected by a severe drought. South Africa. South Africa is one of the first countries facing the situation of the water crisis. In January 2018, it was predicted by the officials in one of the main cities of South Africa, Cape Town, the municipal water will run out within 3 months. The situation was so severe that photos of parched earth dams and locals lining up to collect spring water flashed across the internet and news sites. Brazil. Brazil is another country that is going through a similar situation as South Africa. And it goes on, ladies and gentlemen. Jordan. Jordan is the 3rd most water scarce country in the world. They say that water availability per capita in the Arab world is expected to be halved by 2050. In recent years, Egypt has become one of those countries facing water shortage. Insufficient irrigation techniques, misuse of water, and uneven water distribution are some major factors behind water crisis in Egypt. Japan. It's a surprise that the world's most high-tech country can also be under the threat of running out of water in the near future. Mexico. And it goes on, ladies and gentlemen. Mexico, Iran, England, China. It's going on all over the world, and I don't think that people are really noticing this. Why? Because water is still coming out of their taps. Jordan is now in the grip of one of the most severe droughts in its history, but many warn the worst is yet to come. This is what droughts affect. They don't really affect too much how many showers you can take, because you can live with taking a shower every other day, but they affect our food production. And if food production in these countries is going down all over the world, then what does it mean for those countries that actually still produce food? For example, here in the US, our food production will eventually decrease, especially since most of our droughts are happening in those parts of the country that are like the food basket of the world, really. So what's going to happen? There's going to be more pressure put on those food stuff that's being produced, actually produced. And of course, we're going to have higher prices in addition to shortages. So as I've stated in several videos, if there is stuff on the shelf now, get it now. This video has nothing to do with inflation, with the money supply being pumped up and making the dollar worth less, so it takes you more dollars to buy stuff. No, it's that we are going to be entering into a period of time that is a cyclic weather pattern that has happened millions of years that this earth has been here. So you need to protect yourselves by getting those things that you can now. And yes, I'll say it again, get stuff. Pakistan. Most of the districts falling under arid zones with high dependency on rainfall did not receive rainfall between April and November. Due to deficiency of pre-winter and winter rainfall, a moderate drought-like condition has emerged in southern and western parts of this region, which I cannot pronounce. About 3.8 million people, which is 26% of the population analyzed, are estimated to be facing high levels of acute food insecurity in the current period of March to June of 2021. So we are being warned right now about droughts, about mega droughts, not only here in the US, but in the world. What does that mean? It doesn't mean that tomorrow you're going to go to the store and there's not going to be anything on the shelves. It means that that is a leading indicator to what is to come. So go ahead and prepare the best that you can. Here it says 330,000 Chinese facing drinking water shortages as drought hits the south. Many people are going to say, well, 330,000 Chinese, that is nothing. This is what they are telling us about. Drought conditions continue in spring of 2021. Almost half of the United States is currently experiencing some level of drought and is expected to worsen in upcoming months. Experts say the dry conditions could put a strain on water supplies and have important effects on the environment, such as increasing susceptibility to fires this summer. So you see, that's another collateral damage of droughts. Not only that we have less water to deal with that we can use, but that also we have less food that we're going to be able to produce. But now here, forest fires. Ladies and gentlemen, you know what? I'm not a fearmonger. I just like to take a look at things and somewhat analyze them to the best of my ability, and then try to foresee what these things are going to cost to happen in the future. And I just don't see a very good outcome if the weather continues to be the way that it has been in the last few years as far as droughts go. As most of you know, I am a cycles guy. I like to study cycles, and this is a cycle. It is a cyclic weather pattern that has happened before, as I previously stated. If we know that this is a cyclic weather pattern, and we could look back at least to the 1930s during the Dust Bowl, what happened back then? A lot of us probably studied this in high school, that many farmers had to shut down, had to sell their farms, had to foreclose on their farms, had to leave their farms because they just couldn't grow anything and they couldn't handle the dust. I believe they had a disease back then that they called black lung or something like that, because the dust was so fine that people had no choice but to breathe it in, even with face coverings on. And here, California faces another drought as lake beds turn to dust. The key term is lake beds, plural. And I just want to go ahead and show you some of the pictures that they have coming out of California. Now look at that. I mean, when you look at these pictures, just think of how much water has been depleted from these. This here, when I was in Afghanistan, is what we used to call a wadi, which signified that it was a riverbed that was dry, that was completely dry. Now look at that. We have wadis here in the U.S. And as you can see, take a look at the water level. How much water level has actually gone away? Look, the water used to come up to here where you see the green right there. And look at that. There's no water at all. I remember showing this picture on one of my previous videos when I first started covering these droughts. Look at this. This water level here probably used to go up about halfway up these piers right here that hold up these bridges. Or at the minimum up to the bottom of the piers. And look at how low that is. And this is not just happening here, ladies and gentlemen. It's happening in a lot of other countries in the world that also produce a lot of food. Look at this here. I read an article about this here the other day saying that a lot of houseboats that were parked here or docked here had to be rushed out of there because the water level was getting so low. I don't think that this is something that we can really ignore. I mean, look at this. It's just kind of never ending. And look at this. These are farmers tearing down their crops or tearing down their trees because they know they're not going to have enough water in order for their trees to be able to produce. And they don't want their trees sucking up any water that they can use for other crops. Another drought looms. Is Afghanistan better prepared? And it says here, quote, I don't remember a season as terrible as this one. After a winter of scant snowfall, a looming drought is forcing Afghanistan to try to prevent another migration crisis before it erupts. And it says that snow and rainfall were nearly half their normal levels in parts of the country during a warm winter triggered by La Niña conditions. Farmers worry that there's not enough water from the winter melt to sustain their harvest, raising fears of crop failures as food shortages that could push people to abandon their land. Same thing that happened during the Dust Bowl, ladies and gentlemen. Widespread drought in Mexico. Mexico is experiencing one of its most widespread and intense droughts in decades. Nearly 85% of the country is facing drought conditions as of April of this year. Large reservoirs across the country are standing at exceptionally low levels. Just like us here in the western part of the country, ladies and gentlemen, they're experiencing pretty much the same thing that we are here in the western part of the country. Brazil, on drought alert, faces worst dry spell in 91 years. Australia finally got some rain, right? After years of drought. And then what happens? After they got a good amount of rain and they were able to start growing food, they're having a mouse plague or a mice plague where mice are just coming out of everywhere and destroying their crops. These are things that we need to learn from, prepare for, and make sure that we look ahead into the future and see what we can do in order to be better prepared. Make sure that you don't only have food put away, but that you have ways to grow your own food, right? But that you have ways to collect your own water. But that you have a supply of food stored away in your pantry that will see you through a failed harvest. Ladies and gentlemen, I don't know how to tell you enough to not listen to the naysayers. As I said previously, I'm not here to scare you, but I do hope that you get scared just enough to take action, because as I've stated before, the government is not going to be there to bail you out when your pantry is empty because you failed to prepare. So if you don't want to buy stuff, if you don't want to buy food, then you have absolutely no one to blame but yourselves if in the future you find yourself with nothing to feed your family because you didn't prepare ahead of time. This here is the time that we need to prepare, ladies and gentlemen. Having said that, I really hope that you heed the warning. What's the worst that can happen? What is the worst that can happen? That if you get extra food, that you just eat it? If nothing happens, let's say I'm crazy, all right? Let's say I am just a nut, all right? I am this nutball here on YouTube that likes to show you all the stuff he gets, and I'm just crazy. What is the worst that can happen, ladies and gentlemen? That you have extra food? That's the worst that can happen. That you have an extra set of tires that you know you're going to use anyways? That's the worst that can happen. But you have to do what you're comfortable with, ladies and gentlemen. Remember to be good to each other. When good people do good things happen. Remember to reach one, teach one, and repeat. If we all did this, the world would be a better place, and you know that it will be a better place. Many blessings to every one of you and your families. This is Alaska Prepper. I am out.